unleashing emotions so intense, so awesome, there is no defense. Prepare yourself. From deep space, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, rated PG. Starts this week at a theater near you.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and we are on our next to last Halloween streaming video of 2020. I want to thank everybody that's chosen to watch these, because I know it's niche. You know, I know it's not something new or whatever. This is for the hardcores out there. It's for everybody, but the hardcores are the ones that are watching this. And for our 9th installment, we're tackling 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers that would have definitely made the why the hell haven't I seen this reviews that I'm probably going to end up getting to one of these days. Because, wow. Even though I've never seen this, I know the ending. It's iconic. For a pop culture guy like me, I know, and the end of Donald Sutherland's face and everything. I mean, it's hard not to know. It's hard to avoid those kind of spoilers, even if you haven't seen the movie. And boy, did this movie still shake me. This movie is a lot for me. This movie was, I loved it. And I know that, like, yeah, there's the 1950s one, and some people probably prefer that. And I can see that. The things that come first, are special. You know, especially when they're doing something different and unique and saying something. You know, the original was coming out in, McCarthy era and communism and, who to trust. People not who they are, people changing. People, the paranoia of it all. Same as, like, The Thing from Another World. They got remade in a couple of years after this by John Carpenter, which, it came first. It was another movie about who can you trust, who is who they say they are, that kind of thing. But when you can make a movie all those years later, like this, like The Thing, the important thing about it is to not, disrespect the original, but can you improve upon it in a way that doesn't just give you the same old thing while still giving you the same old thing in a way, right? Add something better to it. Now, I remember enough about the original 1951 to know, look, it's fine. To me, a lot of those movies, they're a representation of the times. The writing is a representation of the times. The acting is the representation of the times. And I don't dislike the original. I just prefer this one now that I've seen this. Because what this one adds to me is well, first off, better acting, better directing, better writing, better cinematography. Because it's, it's 20 some years later. All these things that can get better. To me, this movie improved on every single level. Other than, some people, again, if you just have that hardcore, die hard, the first Invasion of the Body Snatchers is the only one I care about, then fine. Me, I like to see somebody do something interesting with it, and they did here with this movie. Now remember, I know the end of this movie, but it did not change the fact that I was riveted through the whole thing. The music, the atmosphere, the way it was shot. We talked about this in the chat. All these real near shots, really personal shots, really close shots, really claustrophobic areas that they put you in this movie. They really box you in to make you even more paranoid as you're watching this. This really quiet takeover of the planet by these plants, these things that drift on the solar winds that come from planet to planet, taking over, spreading their hive mind that removes all emotion and need for it, and is thinking that we're making your world a better place. You're becoming a new life form. You are becoming one of us, a part of a whole. Your memories are still intact, but you lose all of the things that make you weak, make you fight, make you warlike, all these things. But they also remove the other things that are important, and that's just really the humanity, our humanity. But this just really had me through the whole thing, even though, like I said, I knew where it was going, and it didn't make me not care. I didn't care about any of the characters in the original, even though Kevin McCarthy is in both. Basically, he gets to say basically the same thing he said at the original, but in this, I gave a shit. I really like Donald Sutherland in this movie. I've liked him in a lot of things, and I can say now, having watched this for the first time, this is my favorite thing I think I might have seen him in, because it's just so, and I haven't seen everything that he's been in, so there's still the jury's still out on that. But as of right now, seeing pretty much everything, a lot of stuff post like mid 80s of Donald Sutherland's, I can say that this is my favorite thing that I've seen him in. I really gave a shit about his character and Brooke Adams, who I'm not familiar with. I was not familiar with at all. Wow, wow. Why didn't we see more of her in the 80s and 90s? I saw her list of movies. She is fantastic in this as this woman who one of the first people. She is our character viewpoint of the person who starts to figure things out, to first see the warning signs, to first find somebody that she thinks is not who they say they are. I also didn't know that Jeff Goldblum was in this movie. Okay, if I had known Jeff Goldblum was in this movie at any point in my life where I gave a shit about Jeff Goldblum, which was starting at probably Jurassic Park, I'd have seen this movie by now. He plays Jack. I loved it. He was Goldblum. What else am I going to say? He was Goldblum. He is a guy who, as the doctor, played by Leonard Nimoy, says in this, what does he say? You have some friends who like to play pranks on you. I don't have any friends, doctor. Well, maybe some enemies. He was great in this. Speaking of Leonard Nimoy, who plays Dr. Where is his name here? I had it written down. Dr. David Kibner. He's basically the shrink version of Spock. He is very logical and very intense at times. And he is this voice of reason at first in this movie. And I really dug it until you realize where everybody ends up in this movie, is a pod person. And so you like him. I liked what he was doing in this movie up until the point where you realize, uh-oh. Also, Veronica Cartwright. I almost said Nancy Cartwright because of the Simpsons recognition. Veronica Cartwright, who plays Nancy in here, who I knew where she was headed at the end of this movie as well. I really liked her a lot in this. I prefer definitely this character than I do to the character she was in Alien. But I also really loved her on The X-Files. If you haven't seen her on The X-Files, she was great as... Well, I don't want to spoil it, but she was a really great character in that. Also, Robert Duvall at the beginning of this movie gets an uncredited role as a priest on a swing set, looking creepy as fuck. Don't even know what that was for, but to maybe just be like, oh my god, Robert Duvall, why is he in this for 5 seconds? I think it really was just to be creepy. And I gotta give it up because Philip Kaufman, the director of this, and who's written some amazing stuff, did a great job directing here in this movie. He's been responsible for stuff like Josie Wales and, the story part of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I was also really surprised that, other stuff, like The Right Stuff, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, Henry and June, really interesting character stuff. A lot of sexual stuff with when you get to Unbearable Lightness, Henry and June and Quills. But he was great as the director of this. I really loved it. And again, it goes back to also the director of cinematography and the music in this. Like I said, everything is so tight and close. Wherever you go, you feel like you're not safe. You need to. I felt really like I wanted to run like these characters. I wanted to not be trapped, and I felt trapped this entire movie. It felt even more trapped than like the characters in The Thing, who were literally trapped in Antarctica and couldn't even really go outside. I felt more free in that movie in this than in this movie, and they had plenty of space to go around in. And that's saying something, the way that they shot this. And so, and I wrote a lot here, guys, because my reactions during this were just, everything, like I said, is so quiet. Everything starts so quiet. We get that exposition right at the beginning. We see the plants. We know that it starts on the plants. And that's another thing, like the special effects that they did in this were definitely, you could see, like, I wonder if some of them worked on The Thing. Because there's a plant in this, there's a pot in this, and the way it opens up and everything, it looked like it was that the Thing straight up stole almost that shot where the plant that's coming out of the dogs at one point goes whoosh, towards the front of towards the camera. I felt that in this. The practical effects were so fucking good in this. Even if, like, I'll be real, like the pods, they looked like pods, but other things in here were some of the creepiest, nightmare-inducing fuel I have ever seen. Like when you see the people, or not people, the replacements coming out of these things, like plant babies. It is horrifying. When they first find the body that's really Jeff Goldblum, and they don't know it's Jeff Goldblum, because he's standing right there. And then the eyes open because he's asleep. It's awake. It's in the process of killing him. But you don't know that. Like, it made you wonder, who's the pod person? The one who's standing there or the thing on the table? I loved that. I had that kind of confusion, that kind of paranoia, that this movie, like, just left me wondering for a long time, really, who is who they say they are. Some of them are pretty obvious. Some of them just aren't. Because for me, I kept thinking that Leonard Nimoy's Dr. Kibner, I felt like he was a pod person right from the get-go, because he just was just so... Even when he would do something that seemed a little emotional, it was like he was channeling Spock through this whole movie, just giving nothing away. Being so flat with his deliveries and his lines, so that you really, up until the point that you see the reveal, you go, oh no. Because you really don't know when he turned. Because one of the great things also about this is when you're talking to somebody early on, like in this takeover, you might not know. And there are all these little tricks that they'd pull that were really interesting if you'd catch them. Like even at the end, when they say, does anybody, if you have any questions, ask, when they're all in line, when it's all nothing but pod people, and they're like, this line is just for Sausalito. If you have any questions, ask. And I'm like, that's a trap. Because they're all one mind, right? So if you ask a question, it means you're not one of them. There was even a scene, at the scene where there's music playing at the end. There's like Amazing Grace on bagpipes. I almost felt like it was meant to draw people out, to think that there was people. There's something there. There's like a sign that you know, there's other people, when I think it's really just to get you in. The way they talk, like, what is your name? What is your address? Just stand here and wait a while. Somebody will be right with you. It's all so great. And just seeing the differences of the people on the street who you think are still human, opposite someone standing right next to them that is definitely not. And it was, to me, that was really evident in the strip club area where they were trying to get through that area to the town of, what was it, San Francisco, I think, where those guys were clearly still not pod people, but like people right next to them, they seemed like to be. And just how it, like, again, how it begins, like, she tells Matthew there's something wrong with Jeffrey. And he quietly listens to her, and I love this back and forth of, like, he believes her, he believes that she believes it, and he doesn't condescend her. He's like, hey, but we can talk to this person, and he's just going to give you all the other things that would make you think that without making you feel like an asshole or that you're crazy. I loved that. But then when he goes to the dry cleaners and the guy's like, that's not my wife. She wrong. She not right. It starts to weigh on him a little bit. And it does take him a minute to come around because he's still just like, we're regular, like a regular person would. Like, this is getting weird, but come on. Like, maybe I work in the health department. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe there's something in the air. Maybe there's some sort of new thing going around that's making people, as like even Kibner says, a hallucinatory flu. So he's on board, but he's one of those people that really needs to see. And when he finally sees that pod person at Jack and Nancy's mud bath place, come on. There was some real 70s shit going on here, by the way. Yeah, mud baths. People cooking in the woks. I'm not saying that we don't cook in woks still. I'm just saying that I remember things like this starting to get really popular. Everybody's walking it up, I really enjoyed watching some of those things that were popular in those times. But speaking of popular in those times, all right, like the 50s version that was coming off of communism and all that, in the 70s they were coming off of Watergate, Nixon. You had cults. We were talking about that too. People that would go, into a cult and come out somebody else. So there was lots of paranoia in the 70s as well, just in a different way. And I feel like they took a lot of that stuff and put that in here because people were, untrustworthy of the government and each other. Like we still are. I mean, sometimes I'm walking around, I listen to some people talking and go, who are you? What are you? Especially right now. And that can be said to me. I'm sure there's some people out there that are like, what the hell is that guy's problem? And I'd say, well, how much time you got? But I assure you, I'm all right for the most part. I just think too much. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that in here. I also thought that, man, they unionized really fast in this. Like, Jeffrey goes from, like, being, he's changed, and it was really creepy watching him dump himself out into the dumpster, into the back of the waiting garbage truck that seemed to just be ready for him. Like, it was already that fast. Like, hey, because in the whole back of that dumpster, that garbage truck, was just more people that had decomposed, and it was like that early sign of just how quick it was moving and how he's just like, I've got a meeting with some people, and he's just like, he goes outside, they're right there. Like, they were already up and running full steam ahead. It was just, but so quiet. There was no alarm bells, there's no whistles, there's nothing, it's all under the table, all behind closed doors where it's just all happening. And I loved it because it made me feel like you don't see, just like in the 50s version, you don't really see what's happening to people until they show you what's happening to people. And that scene was fantastic too, where they're locked up in Matthew's house. And everybody's trying to stay awake, but they can't. And Matthew falls asleep outside, and it gives one of the best scenes in the movie. Because I'm like, I was so afraid for Matthew. Even though I know where it's headed, I was like, don't tell me it happens now. Where the plant is, they've already put them everywhere. The pods are everywhere in this yard waiting for them to fall asleep. They're like, we don't have to go in there. We don't have to go in there and be violent. Because it's a waiting game for us. And also, if we destroy them, if we kill them, they probably can't take us. They need us alive. And so he's asleep, and this thing starts to take him over, and the process goes on for an uncomfortable amount of time. Where I'm like, wake up! Wake up! Because we see this thing, these multiple pods pushing out all these pod people that look just horrifying with their eyes and everything not quite done and forming in front of our eyes. And he's just completely out of it, almost gone, until Nancy comes out shouting and waking everybody up and seeing his own self laying there, and he takes the axe to its head. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. I also couldn't help but think about the line, "It's not paranoia if they are out to get you." And speaking of, not speaking of, but I just wanted to mention, yes, Kevin McCarthy is in this, and he does his whole spiel from the end of the first movie. You're next, get out of here. They're coming for you. But what we didn't see at the end of that movie is what we get to see what happens to that guy in this one, which is he tears off. But we see all these other ones running after him. I believe it's kind of from the first movie, except this time he gets he's run down and nobody doing anything. Which starts that whole Matthew trying to still reach out to authorities, still reach out to people who should be able to help, to government agencies, to the mayor. But this is around that time where we realize Kibner and Jeffrey and all of them, they're all in on it. It's all a conspiracy, but it's like a conspiracy more of like this hive mind just trying to corner up everybody, tie all the loose ends, everybody that's in your little circle of people, get them all cornered up, switched over, and part of the hive mind. It was sad watching Goldblum run away, knowing that, well, he's not going to come back as himself. I joked, me in this situation, right? We all like to put ourselves in here, and me being me, right? I mean, I'm the kind of guy who already sleeps with kind of one eye open. Not like I'm waiting for somebody to kick the door down. I'm a pretty light sleeper. And I have a kind of an unnatural trust of big, crowds of people and things like that. And I just thought, man, like with the way that I live my life and the way I think about things, I said, I have no doubt that at some point they'd get me. But I would definitely be trying to go out like Donald Sutherland at least. Like, y'all gonna have to chase my ass. You're gonna have to really do a good job at cornering me. Because if I figure this out, I'm running, and I am out. I am out. And I would probably hope, I don't know, man, like, what would anybody else do? I mean, would you try to lay low? Would you try to keep your head down? Would you try to learn their patterns to see if if that's a good way to proceed and try to escape? Because that's the only way, is to get as far away from other things. You would have to go somewhere in the middle of fucking nowhere, where there'd be no reason for anybody else to be out there, and you would have to figure out how to live and survive on your own. It would be a horrifying nightmare. And you would probably get to points where you'd be like, man, I should just give up. I should just give up and end it all. Either or join in and just say, fuck it. But I mean, that will to survive, that humans, talking like the guys from that, oh gosh, what was that? Oh, it was they did it for the Mystery Science Theater movie. Now I can't remember what it is. To talk like the human. But yeah, the thing that humanity has, that will to survive, that will to keep going, that we just don't want to quit, not to give up. I think some of us have it. I would hope that I would have it in this situation. I don't know. But I mean, we all say that, right? Like, yeah, man, I'll take these things on, but really, I'll probably just go down to the first wave. so much, like so emotional about a little flower. I love it. But I think I'm about done with what I need to say, but it really comes to a head when they do escape the house, but they get separated. Jack and Nancy run off to... Jack tries to lead them away. Nancy goes with, leaving Matt and Elizabeth to try to make it on their own. And I love this shot because they show them from the feet down as they're passing everybody the way that their gait of walking is. And how when they approach somebody else who's clearly not a human anymore, it makes you think, like, is it because they're paying attention to how you're walking, or that you got too close in the proximity that they can all kind of read their own, like psychically almost, to know that somebody's not there and then to see the footsteps change. I love the way they shot that. I believe the director, Bill from the chat, said that the director was the cab driver who turns them in, saying that I've got 2 type H's in the car. And they take some speed to stay awake, but they're surrounded. And just like everything else, like, they don't come in shooting. They don't have to do anything violent. They come in, and it's Jack and it's Dr. Kibner and Jeffrey and them, after they've taken the speed, which was a really great call at that moment to have them come in and do that, as Regina in the chat said. Because when they hit them with the sedative here in this scene, where it's all over for them, right? And Donald Sutherland telling Kibner, like, you're killing us. You're killing me, man. Like, you're killing what we are. And his speech about telling them where they come from, why they, like, what their existence is all about, and we're freeing you from all of this, and you're becoming a new higher life form. You're evolving, like it's a privilege. And there is something kind of seductive almost about that in a way, where you could go, like, where you could almost start to believe, like, well, if it's still me, kind of, but that idea of losing everything that makes you you, when you just become a part of a collective, that's very cult-like. And I think that was right when we started, we mentioned cults in the chat for a minute. But it is just this desperate, sad moment. And yes, they get the drop on him, and they killed Jeff Goldblum pod person, and they lock Nimoy pod person away, and they try to get away. And I love that moment where they see Nancy in the stairwell, and for a second, even though I know she's fine, I know she's fine from the end of the movie, but that not knowing still, there was even a part of me where I'm going, well, she better, like, say something here in a second, because I can imagine the audience for the first time, right? Like, oh fuck. There's so many of those oh fuck moments where you walk around a corner and there's someone there and you go, oh fuck. And it's, like in a horror movie, it's always Jason or Michael Myers or some shit like that. You turn around and the bad guy's there, and it's clear that it's a bad guy. But in this, it's just another person. It's just your friend. They're your friend anymore. And having to say, like, oh fuck, every time you see another person, it was, ugh. And I even said that I got the full body heebie-jeebies, where you just, like, there's a point when they were running away from them after they got Nancy out that I just went, oh, like, my body couldn't take it anymore. And I went to, like, a whole body buzz where it's just, like, freaking out. And so they try to get out with Nancy. And then the guy who, I believe this is who this is supposed to be, there was a guy at the beginning that you see a couple of times who has a dog and he plays the banjo. Well, all of a sudden, a dog walks up with that guy's face. And that is a single, like, that is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life, because there's really no context for it, because apparently what you guess you have to think is that somehow the dog and the guy, the pod version of that, got screwed up and made this thing. And it's all like, ah! I love it. But holy God, that's nightmare fuel. And they lose Nancy again. Poor Nancy. When they find the farm, And it just gets more and more desperate. She breaks her heel. She can barely walk now. And I was wondering when those heels were going to be a problem for her. And they ended up being a problem for her late in the game, right when they need her to really walk around because the sedative is still in their system. And she can't go on. And he hears the ships and he hears the bagpipe music. And he's like, we're going to get on a ship. I'm going to run over there. I'm going to make sure that we can get on. And then I'm coming back and I'm getting you on that ship. And she stays behind, and I went, man, he is leaving, and when he comes back, she is not going to be her anymore. And I was right. He sees that the pods are getting put on ships across the globe to make sure every single person all over the world is being liberated to their new life form. And there she is, and she won't wake up. And he tells her, she told him that she loves him, and he tells her that he loves her. I think he told her that before he even left her. But he comes back and he's holding her and he's telling her he loves her, and then she just decomposes in his hands, and it was horrifying. It was so well done, and that scream that he starts to let out, like, "Ah!" Watching this person happen, and there she is, naked as the day she was born, standing there beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Like, some nude scenes don't need to be there. But this was one of those nude scenes where it's like, it makes sense psychologically to me. That he's in love with her. He just saw her disintegrate. There she is, this new life form, naked and beautiful, and telling him that just come with me. Just come with me. This kind of seduction without being seductive. Like that temptation of, the thing that he would have wanted if she were a human. And now to have to run from it terrified. It's just fucking great storytelling. And every time somebody does something like that in a movie, like I don't like to use the word brave for like actors and actresses that choose to do things for their character. But this time, man, I really feel like that was just a really, like, if that actress said no, I feel like that would have been missing something. It would have been the same thing if it was a guy. I would say the same thing if it was a guy. I don't necessarily want to see some dude's junk, but if it fit the situation, I know I'm getting off topic probably, but anyway, enough about junk and boobs. He runs and he does burn down their farm. But the thing is like you just know that it's really just slowing them down. But for him, this is that last desperate act of rebellion, of making a stand, to fight back in some fashion that if you're going to take me, you're not going to take me quietly. I'm going to fuck you up. Even if it means little in the end, it's again, that human spirit, to fight back, to rage against those things that are trying to change you. And he's under the dock, and they're like, he can't stay awake forever, and the guy's got the flashlight like right there on him, and I knew at that moment that's what he was taking. There's nowhere for him to go. They have him, and they just don't show them take him there. And so when you see him go back to work, I mean, it's immediately, if you were dumb, you might think that somehow he walked out of there and like just sort of matriculated back into the world. They even try to trick you with the fact that he's still cutting up the piece of paper. But I think that's just memory. It doesn't mean anything. He's just cutting shit up. Just like she goes back to her job. He sees her at the job, and for a second, again, if you're dumb, dumb's maybe too strong a word. You would think, oh, he's just trying to, he's taking one last look, like, oh, there she is. But really, it's just a fake out. You're hoping against hope, I'm sure, that he's just putting on a really good acting job for these things. But he walks outside, and then all of a sudden you just hear Nancy say off camera, "Matthew!" And he turns and he stands and looks at her, and she stops for a second, hesitates for a second, and then smiles and starts to go towards him, and that's when we get the as she screams, "No, no, no," and fades to black down his throat. And we get some of the quietest titles and I've ever heard, because it's just so down note. This thing wins, and you assume that she's taken eventually too, and it doesn't make it any less powerful, and it doesn't make me mad or sad. It just it's not to me as good as The Thing, but I can see where The Thing got a lot of or they might have taken a lot of inspiration from this, and it just makes The Thing even more interesting now too. And even though this might be considered usually if I see something like this, I go, I'm glad I saw it, I never need to see it again. But that's not the case here. In fact, as soon as I can, I'm probably going to try to pick this up on Blu-ray for my collection, just in case I ever need to watch it and I can't find it on a streaming service. I want to have this sumbitch, because that was a lot, and I'm glad that we're going out kind of on a high note for these, because this movie was kick-ass and scary in the best possible way, and it had the right kind of horror elements without, and just such a quiet way that just makes it even more disturbing. So anyway, if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Our 10th and final Halloween streaming review is going to be on Saturday night. The viewing party is going to start at 8 o'clock, and the review will be up shortly after, like this one from this night. And we're going to be watching The Cabin in the Woods from Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon's mind. And I've already seen that movie, but I've never reviewed it. And I don't think everybody in the chat that usually shows up has seen it either. So I'm really excited to go out. Again, thank you guys so much for watching these. I really appreciate it. I love talking about these movies, and we're going to have to do something more like that next year. And in fact, we're going to be doing something similar for Christmas. So keep a lookout for the holiday streaming reviews. the Jolly Merry Christmas, whatever. I don't know what I'm going to call it. All right. So anyway, this is Rob saying have a great night, everybody. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye. Unless I'm a pod person, and then fucking run.